All right, so we're diving into the Swaziland Constitution.
Oh, yeah.
And let's be honest, it's not exactly like beach reading material,
Right.
but stick with us. This document is way more interesting
Yeah, it really is.
than you might think at first glance.
Absolutely.
It's like a history book, legal thriller,
Yeah.
a cultural guide, all rolled into one.
It's true. This Constitution is really like a roadmap to understanding a nation
Yeah.
that's kind of navigating this really unique path,
Yep.
blending modern ideas with like centuries-old traditions.
Exactly. So let's unpack this thing.
Yeah.
The document itself is structured pretty logically.
Okay.
You've got chapters on protecting basic rights,
Right.
the powers of the legislature, how the courts work,
Yeah.
public finances, all that nitty-gritty stuff about how a country runs.
It's that instruction manual
Yeah.
for a whole nation.
Yeah, it's like the instruction manual, but way more interesting than putting together furniture.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Way more.
So just like a good instruction manual,
Okay.
it starts with a preamble,
Yeah,
which is basically like a statement of purpose.
that's right.
And what's really striking here
Okay.
is how it goes beyond just like the dry legal stuff.
Yes.
And really emphasizes things like peace, order, good governance,
Yes.
even the happiness and welfare of all the Swazi people.
Like, it's almost aspirational.
Yeah.
It is.
It's like they're saying, hey, we're not just setting up a bunch of rules.
Yeah.
We're aiming for a society where everyone can thrive,
Yeah.
which I really like.
It's a good goal.
So you can't talk about Swaziland without talking about the monarchy, right?
You can't.
That's front and center in this constitution.
Absolutely. Yeah. Front and center.
Yep.
Makes it very clear.
Yeah.
The king is the head of state,
Okay.
and his authority is, pretty extensive.
Yeah.
He's not just some figurehead.
Right.
He's the commander-in-chief of the whole defense force.
Wow.
The top, in the police service, and even in charge of correctional services.
So, wow, that's a lot of hats to wear.
It is a lot.
I was going to say, if you ever find yourself needing legal help in Swaziland,
Right.
maybe try appealing to the king directly, but I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But seriously, though,
Yeah.
this concentration of power is pretty unique.
It is.
It really makes you wonder about the checks and balances in this system.
Yeah, and that's one of the big, I think, questions this document raises.
Absolutely.
Now, the Constitution also gets into the kind of nitty-gritty of succession to the throne.
Oh, okay.
So it's hereditary,
Okay.
meaning it passes down through the family line.
Makes sense.
But there are very specific rules about the role of the queen regent
Okay.
if the king can't rule for whatever reason.
Uh-huh.
And even the senior prince,
Oh, okay.
who assists her.
Wow. So
It's very structured, very traditional.
Okay, so here's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
Are you ready for this?
Yeah, lay it on me.
The king has immunity from lawsuits
Okay.
and from paying taxes.
Oh, wow.
Talk about perks.
Right.
But seriously, it makes you wonder, why is this kind of protection seen as necessary
Yeah.
in a modern nation?
It's a really good question. And, these are the kinds of things that make you think critically about the system as a whole.
Exactly.
Now, shifting gears a bit,
Okay.
the Constitution also addresses fundamental rights and freedoms.
Okay.
And you might be surprised to learn that many of the rights that we associate with, democratic societies
Yeah.
are guaranteed here in Swaziland.
Right. Like freedom of speech, freedom of religion.
Yes.
The right to assemble peacefully, like the whole 9 yards.
That's right.
It's like a reflection of those universal values, but within this really unique monarchical context.
Exactly. It's fascinating to see how those universal principles are adapted and kind of interpreted within this, a different cultural and political setting.
Absolutely.
And the document actually goes into quite a bit of detail about certain rights. Okay.
For example, the protection of life gets a very thorough treatment.
Yeah. They don't shy away from the tough stuff,
They don't.
They dive into the death penalty when it's allowed.
Uh-huh.
Even the legality of abortion
Yeah.
is addressed with very specific exceptions laid out.
Yes.
It's definitely not afraid to tackle those complex issues head on.
No, it really shows you how a constitution isn't just about like abstract principles.
Right.
It's about grappling with like real world, dilemmas
Yeah.
and providing these legal frameworks
Yeah.
for how to address them.
Absolutely.
And the document also lays out very clearly what your rights are if you're ever arrested
Okay.
or detained.
So they're very specific about due process.
Yes.
Like, you have the right to a lawyer, to be informed of the charges against you, to be protected from unreasonable detention. It's like they're saying, hey, even if you're in trouble with the law, you still have these basic rights.
Exactly. It's about ensuring fairness.
Yeah.
And preventing those abuses of power.
Absolutely.
Now, here's another interesting bit. Freedom of expression is protected.
Okay.
But there are limitations for public officers.
So you're saying government employees have to watch what they say a little more carefully.
They do.
That's like free speech with an asterisk.
Yeah, and it raises questions about the balance, between that right to free speech and the responsibilities that come with public service.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, let's move on to something that's truly unique to Swaziland. The Tinkundla system.
Okay.
This is how they organize their political life.
All right.
And it's definitely not your typical, election setup.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting.
Yes.
From what I've read, it's all about building up from the grassroots level, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So the system is based on these things called Tinkundla, which are basically local communities.
Okay.
It's a very direct form of representation where people in those local communities choose who goes to parliament.
So instead of voting for, political parties, you're voting for someone from your own community.
That's right. Someone you probably know.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
It is cool.
I like that.
It puts a real emphasis on those local voices.
Yeah.
And another really noteworthy thing about the Tinkundla system is the emphasis on women's representation.
Okay.
So the Constitution mandates that at least 30% of Parliament must be women.
That's pretty progressive, especially considering, the traditional context.
It is.
It shows a real commitment to making sure women have a strong voice in government.
It does.
So now let's shift to Parliament itself.
Okay.
The heart of lawmaking.
Yes.
Just like a lot of democratic systems, Swaziland has a bicameral system, meaning there are two houses.
Right.
The Senate and the House of Assembly.
Correct.
Okay, so it's kind of like the U.S. Congress with two chambers working together.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing there's a Swazi twist
You bet.
to how it all works.
There is.
Yeah.
So the way members are chosen for each chamber is quite unique.
Okay, I'm all ears.
All right.
It sounds interesting.
So some senators are elected by the House of Assembly,
Okay.
but others are appointed directly by the king.
Wow.
And then there's even a system to ensure representation from different regions
Oh.
and walks of life.
Oh, wow.
So it's a real mix,
Interesting.
aiming for a diverse group of lawmakers.
So it's a blend of elected officials and those chosen by the king.
That's right.
That's gotta create an interesting dynamic.
It does. And that blend of tradition and modern practices plays out in how laws are made, too.
Okay.
So the king has to give his assent,
Okay.
meaning approval for a bill to become a law.
So he has the final say,
Yes.
even though Parliament does the initial work,
Right.
which makes sense in a monarchy.
It does.
But there's a whole process of debate and amendments
Yes.
with both the Senate and the House having their say.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to laws affecting traditional Swazi law and custom,
Okay.
things get even more interesting. So there are separate procedures for those kinds of laws.
You bet.
Wow.
They have to go through specific consultations with traditional authorities.
So it's like this dialogue between the past and present
It is.
playing out in the way they make laws.
It really is.
I like it.
And speaking of power dynamics,
Okay.
there are actually limitations on what the Senate can do,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to money bills.
Oh, okay.
It's a bit of a power struggle between the two houses.
The classic battle over who controls the budget.
That's right, with the House of Assembly holding the purse strings.
Yeah, that's something you see in a lot of political systems, for sure.
You do? All right.
Now let's shift our focus to the folks who uphold the law. The judiciary.
Okay.
Swaziland has a pretty standard judicial hierarchy
All right.
with a high court and a Supreme Court at the top.
And what's really important here is the emphasis on their independence.
Okay.
The Constitution is very clear about the separation of powers, saying that the judiciary should be free from undue influence.
So no one, not even the king, should be able to sway the courts.
That's right.
That's a key principle for a fair and just system.
It is. Now, there's this special body called the Judicial Service Commission that plays a crucial role in maintaining this independence.
All right.
They handle things like appointing judges,
Okay.
dealing with disciplinary matters,
Okay.
basically making sure the courts function smoothly and fairly.
So think of them as like the HR department for judges.
Yeah.
but with a much bigger responsibility.
Way bigger.
Upholding the integrity of the whole judicial system.
That's a great way to put it, but there are limits to even their power.
Oh, okay.
So the High Court, for example, can't touch matters related to the monarchy or traditional institutions.
Right.
Some areas are just off limits.
It's a pretty significant carve-out.
It is.
And it speaks to the enduring power of tradition in Swaziland.
It does. It really highlights that unique balance of power in this country.
Absolutely.
Now let's talk about everyone's favorite topic.
Okay.
Money.
Oh, here we go.
Or more specifically, public finances.
Okay.
So the Constitution sets up something called the Consolidated Fund.
Okay.
Which is basically the big pot where all government revenue goes.
Think of it like the National Piggy Bank.
Yeah, but hopefully with a little bit more security than your average piggy bank.
Right, and the Constitution lays out these very specific rules for how money can be withdrawn from this fund.
That's right.
So it's not like they can just dip into it whenever they want.
No, absolutely not.
Okay, so how does it actually work?
Well, money can only be withdrawn for purposes authorized by Parliament.
Okay.
Either through a specific law called an Appropriation Act.
Okay.
Or through supplementary estimates approved by the House of Assembly.
So it's Parliament,
yes,
the elected representatives, who control the purse strings.
They do, and that makes sense.
Right. It's a key principle of democratic accountability.
Yeah.
The people, through their elected representatives, get to have a say in how their money is spent.
It's their money.
Which is a good thing.
It is.
Now, to prevent any sort of sneaky, unauthorized spending, the Constitution requires that all withdrawals from the Consolidated Fund have to be done according to a process established by law.
Transparency is key, right?
Yeah.
They're not messing around.
Now, what about borrowing money?
Okay.
Governments often need to borrow to fund those big projects or deal with unexpected expenses, right?
Yes.
So how does the Constitution handle that?
So the minister responsible for finances can only borrow money on behalf of the government if Parliament passes a law, specifically authorizing it.
So no going on a spending spree and racking up debt without the approval of Parliament?
No, absolutely not.
Good.
And even when Parliament authorizes borrowing, the terms of the loan have to be presented to Parliament for approval. So there's a double layer of scrutiny.
I like it. It's all about making sure things are done responsibly.
Yes. Now, beyond managing revenue spending and borrowing, the Constitution also addresses this issue of accountability. Nobody wants to see public funds being misused or mismanaged.
Absolutely.
And that's where the Auditor General comes in.
Okay.
They're like the financial watchdog.
All right.
Making sure everyone's playing by the rules, that public funds are being used properly.
Yeah, like the financial detectives of the government, right?
It's a great way to put it.
Sniffing out any irregularities or corruption.
Exactly. And they have a lot of power.
Okay.
They can access any government records.
Oh, wow.
Summon witnesses and issue reports if they find any evidence of financial mismanagement.
So they have real teeth.
They do. They're not just sitting there twiddling their thumbs.
Good.
And their reports go straight to Parliament.
Okay.
Who then have the responsibility to review them.
Okay.
And take any necessary action.
So it's like a system of checks and balances.
It is.
Within the system of checks and balances.
Exactly. And this emphasis on accountability goes beyond the central government.
Okay.
So the Constitution even addresses local government finances.
Oh, wow.
Emphasizing transparency and equitable distribution of resources.
So it's not just about managing the national budget. It's making sure local communities have a say as well.
They do.
That local officials are held accountable.
Absolutely.
Good.
And there's even a section about pensions for public servants, guaranteeing that those who have dedicated their careers to public service will have a secure retirement.
That's important.
It is.
People need to know they'll be taken care of after they retire.
They do. And the Constitution makes it clear that those pension benefits are a charge on the Consolidated Fund.
So they're guaranteed by the government.
They are. And there are rules for how they're calculated and paid.
So we've gone from the big picture of public finances to some pretty specific details.
We have.
Like pensions. It's amazing how much thought and care went into creating this framework.
It is.
For managing public money.
It's impressive, right?
Yeah.
It shows a real commitment to Transparency, accountability, and making sure those public funds are used responsibly for the benefit of all Swazi citizens.
Absolutely.
Now, I think it's time we turn our attention to a topic that's central to the identity and governance of Swaziland.
Ooh, land.
Yeah.
More than just dirt and rocks.
Yes.
It's about history, culture, livelihood.
Yes.
And I'm guessing in a country like Swaziland, land ownership and management get pretty complex.
Very complex. You're absolutely right.
Yes.
And the Swazi constitution reflects this complexity.
Okay.
So it kind of lays out this framework that tries to balance competing interests.
Okay.
And ensure that land, this vital resource, is used sustainably.
Yeah, so I'm eager to hear how they manage that balancing act. What's the starting point?
Okay, so the Constitution makes a pretty bold statement. Right from the start, it declares land, minerals, and water as national resources.
So it's not just private property. It's something that belongs to the nation as a whole.
To the nation as a whole.
Okay, now I know what you're thinking. How do you balance that concept of national ownership with the rights of individuals to actually own and use land?
Exactly.
That seems tricky.
It is tricky.
Yeah.
And the Constitution tackles this challenge by laying out very specific provisions and establishing these specialized institutions. For instance, it recognizes something called Swazi Nation land.
Okay, so what's that?
So this is land that's held in trust by the king for the benefit of the Swazi people.
It's like a collective ownership model.
It is.
And the Constitution also acknowledges the role of traditional authorities in managing this land.
Absolutely. So it's not just a modern bureaucratic system. It incorporates that traditional knowledge and respects the cultural significance of land for the Swazi people.
Yeah, so it's a blend of the old and the new.
It is.
Now, alongside that Swazi Nation land, the Constitution also recognizes individual ownership of land.
Yes.
Guarantees the right to own property, either individually or jointly with others.
Correct.
So there's a balance between national ownership and individual rights.
Right.
Okay. And the Constitution even lays out the conditions under which the government can acquire land for public purposes.
Yes.
Even if the owner doesn't want to sell.
That's right. It's called compulsory acquisition.
Wait, so they can force people to sell their land?
They can, but it's not a free-for-all.
Okay.
It has to be done according to a specific law.
Okay.
And that law has to ensure that the landowner gets fair compensation and has the right to challenge the acquisition in court.
Oh, okay. So there are safeguards in place to protect people's rights.
Exactly.
It's not just the government grabbing land whenever they feel like it.
Absolutely not.
Okay, good.
So it's about finding that balance.
Yeah. Now, to manage all of this and ensure that land is used sustainably, the Constitution establishes specific institutions.
Like what?
Well, one of the key players is the Land Management Board.
Okay, what do they do?
They're essentially the central authority for land administration in Swaziland. They oversee the allocation, the use and development of land, making sure it's done in a sustainable and equitable manner.
So they're like the referees of the land game, making sure everyone is playing by the rules.
Exactly. And the Constitution really stresses their independence.
Right.
So they're supposed to act in the best interests of the Swazi people.
Okay.
Not just for the government or powerful individuals.
So it's another layer of accountability.
It is. And they have the power to create regulations for managing land.
It's a pretty comprehensive system.
It is.
It sounds like they really thought this through.
They did, trying to create a system that balances the needs of the nation with the rights of individuals and the importance of sustainability.
Yeah. It's a complex challenge. But the Constitution lays out a framework for how to address it.
And now, alongside land, the Constitution also addresses minerals.
Minerals.
Yeah, so we're talking about mining.
Yes.
And all the resources found underground.
That's right.
Now, these are valuable resources.
They are.
That can really drive economic growth.
They can.
But they can also be a source of conflict and environmental damage if they're not managed properly.
Absolutely. It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah. So how does the Constitution handle this?
So, just like with land, the Constitution declares minerals to be a national resource, meaning they belong to the nation as a whole.
So it's not a free-for-all where anyone can just dig up whatever they want?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, good.
The Constitution emphasizes that these resources should be used for the development and prosperity of the nation, and that the benefits should be shared equitably among all Swazi people.
Yeah, making sure that the wealth generated from those minerals actually benefits everyone.
Yes.
And not just a select few.
Exactly. And to manage all of this, they have a dedicated institution, the Minerals Management Board.
Okay, what's their role?
So they're kind of like that land management board, but for minerals.
Right.
They grant mining licenses, monitor mining operations, and make sure that environmental regulations are followed.
So they're the guardians of the nation's mineral wealth.
That's right. And just like their land counterparts, the Constitution stresses their independence.
Okay.
They're not supposed to be influenced by political pressure or by mining companies.
They're not just rubber stamping every mining application that comes across their desk.
No, they have a duty to protect the interests of the nation.
Good.
And they also have the power to make regulations for managing mineral resources.
So it's another example of this careful balance between economic development and responsible management of resources.
Right. It's a complex challenge.
Yeah.
But the Constitution lays out the framework for addressing it.
Now, we've talked about land and minerals.
Okay.
But there's another really vital resource that often gets overlooked: water.
Yes.
Especially in a place like Swaziland, where water scarcity can be a real issue.
It can.
So I'm guessing the Constitution addresses this as well.
You bet. Water is essential for life, and the Swazi Constitution recognizes this by dedicating a whole section to its management and protection.
So it's not just an afterthought.
No.
They understand how crucial water is.
Absolutely, and they take a very holistic approach.
Okay.
Emphasizing how water is connected to other natural resources, like land and the environment.
So it's about managing water in a way that doesn't harm the environment or other aspects of the ecosystem.
Exactly, and the Constitution stresses the importance of equitable access to water.
Meaning everyone has the right to clean water, not just those who can afford to pay for it.
That's right. Now, the Constitution doesn't get into like super detailed specifics about water management.
Okay.
But it lays out some key principles and leaves the details to be worked out through laws and regulations.
So it's a framework that guides the development of a more comprehensive water management system.
It is.
And just like with land and minerals, the Constitution acknowledges the role of traditional authorities in managing water.
Absolutely.
Recognizing the importance of traditional knowledge and practices.
Yes, it's about incorporating those centuries-old methods into a modern system.
Yeah, I like that.
Now, water is obviously a part of that broader environment.
Right.
So I'm assuming you're thinking that the Constitution addresses that as well?
I am.
You're right on the money.
Okay.
So the Constitution dedicates a whole section to environmental protection.
Good.
And it starts by recognizing the right to a clean and healthy environment.
So it's not just a government policy, it's a fundamental right of every Swazi citizen.
It is.
That means citizens can hold the government accountable for protecting the environment.
Yes.
And challenge actions that can harm it.
Absolutely. That's a powerful tool for environmental advocacy.
Yeah, it is.
The Constitution also outlines some general principles for environmental protection, including things like sustainable development, the precautionary principle, and public participation in environmental decision-making.
So we got a lot of big ideas here.
We do.
So can you break those down a bit? What do they actually mean in the context of Swaziland?
Okay. Well, sustainable development is all about finding a balance between economic growth, environmental protection, and social equity.
So it's about progress, but not at the expense of the environment or the well-being of future generations.
Exactly. And the precautionary principle basically means that if there's a risk of serious environmental damage, the lack of complete scientific certainty shouldn't be an excuse to delay action to prevent that damage.
So better safe than sorry.
Right. And public participation means that citizens should have a voice in environmental decision-making.
Yeah.
It's about transparency and consultation.
Makes sense. You don't want those decisions being made behind closed doors.
And the Constitution also emphasizes the importance of environmental education, recognizing that informed citizens are better equipped to participate in environmental decision-making and advocate for a healthy environment.
So it's about creating this culture of environmental awareness.
It is.
Now, beyond these broad principles, does the Constitution address any specific environmental issues?
It does. Like what?
Well, it talks about pollution control.
Okay.
Stating that the government has a duty to take measures to prevent and control pollution.
So it's not just hoping that individuals and companies will do the right thing.
Right.
The government has a responsibility to step in and protect the environment.
They do.
Good.
And the Constitution also emphasizes proper waste management.
Recognizing the need to reduce waste, promote recycling, and dispose of waste in a way that doesn't harm the environment.
So moving beyond the old dump it in a landfill approach.
Exactly. It's about finding those more sustainable solutions.
Right.
The Constitution also touches on this issue of biodiversity conservation, recognizing the importance of protecting Swaziland's rich natural heritage.
So biodiversity, that's like all the variety of life we see on Earth, right?
Yes.
From plants and animals to entire ecosystems.
All of it.
Okay.
And the Constitution acknowledges that preserving this biodiversity is essential, not just for the health of the planet, but for the well-being of the Swazi people. And it specifically mentions protecting endangered species and their habitats.
So it's about recognizing the value of nature, not just for its beauty,
but also for its role in supporting life.
Right.
And it also recognizes the cultural importance of biodiversity for the Swazi people, acknowledging their traditional knowledge and practices that have helped to protect and manage those natural resources for generations.
So it's about respecting and incorporating that traditional knowledge into modern conservation efforts.
That's right. Well said.
Now, we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
From those general environmental principles to specific issues like pollution, biodiversity.
Yeah.
It's clear that the Swazi Constitution takes environmental protection really seriously.
It does. It's really impressive how they've woven this commitment to environmental sustainability into the very fabric of their constitution.
Absolutely. Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to touch on one more topic that's been kind of this recurring theme throughout our discussion. Traditional institutions.
Yes. The cornerstone of Swazi culture and governance.
Exactly. We've seen glimpses of how these institutions are woven into like various aspects of the Constitution.
Right.
But let's take a closer look at how they're formally recognized and incorporated into this modern political framework. I'm ready to dive in.
Okay, so the Swazi Constitution dedicates an entire chapter to recognizing and protecting traditional institutions.
So they're not just trying to create like a modern state based solely on Western models.
Yeah.
They understand the importance of their own unique heritage.
They do.
Which I think is really cool.
And at the very heart of these traditional institutions is, of course, the monarchy.
Right.
As we've discussed, the king holds this very unique position, embodying both the modern state and those ancient traditions.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating blend of roles, you know?
It is.
He's a modern head of state,
right,
but also a traditional leader, like all in one.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the Constitution recognizes this duality, outlining the king's powers and responsibilities in both realms.
So now, alongside the king, there's another really crucial figure, the Queen Mother.
Yes, the Queen Mother, a figure of immense respect, influence within Swazi culture.
Absolutely.
And the Constitution acknowledges her role as this key advisor to the king and as a guardian of Swazi traditions and customs.
So it's a recognition of the importance of both male and female leadership within that traditional structure.
It is.
I like that.
Now, beyond the monarchy, the Constitution also recognizes traditional councils. Like the Swazi National Council. Also known as Sabaya.
Sabaya, yeah, the great national gathering.
That's right.
We talked about it briefly before. It's where those representatives from across the nation come together. To discuss important matters.
Exactly. And the Constitution describes it as the nation meeting at the Queen Mother's official residence to deliberate and decide on these critical national issues.
So it's like this forum for dialogue.
It is.
Like bringing different voices to the table.
Exactly. It's a way of ensuring that decisions reflect the will of the people. Even within this monarchical system.
I like that.
Now, on a more local level, the Constitution also recognizes the role of chiefs.
The chiefs, they're the traditional leaders responsible for administering local areas, right?
So you got it. So they uphold customary law, they resolve disputes, they represent the interests of their communities, and the Constitution outlines their responsibilities, emphasizing their role in maintaining order and kind of connecting the central government with those local communities.
So it's recognizing that importance of decentralized leadership.
It is.
Of having those people on the ground who really understand the needs and challenges of their community.
The specific needs. Exactly. And chiefs often rely on advisors, known as Tinvuna, to help them carry out those duties.
So the wise council.
Yes.
Guiding the chiefs, making sure those decisions are made in accordance with tradition and custom.
Right, and the Constitution acknowledges their role in traditional governance, recognizing their importance in keeping those systems running smoothly.
It's incredible how this Constitution weaves together all these different layers of leadership.
It is.
From the king and queen mother at the top
Uh-huh.
to the chiefs and those advisors working within those local communities.
It's a complex
Yeah.
and intricate tapestry
Yeah.
reflecting the deep-rooted traditions and cultural values of the Swazi people.
Absolutely. It's about finding a way for tradition and modernity to kind of coexist and complement each other.
It is.
Now, as we wrap up our exploration of this amazing document,
Okay.
there's one final area I want to touch on. International relations.
Right.
In today's world, no nation is an island.
Right.
Every country has to interact
You got it.
with that global community.
You do.
And the Swazi Constitution recognizes this.
It does.
It lays out some key principles for how Swaziland engages with the rest of the world.
Okay.
So I'm curious, what kind of stance do they take on the global stage?
Well, the Constitution really emphasizes the importance of peaceful coexistence.
Okay.
So it states that the government should promote international peace and security.
So a commitment to diplomacy, to resolving disputes peacefully,
Yes.
to working with other nations to create a more stable world.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it also emphasizes the importance of respecting international law.
So playing by the rules,
Yes.
honoring treaties,
Right. Yeah.
upholding those principles that help keep that international system functioning,
That's right.
which is so important these days.
It is very important.
And it also highlights the need for economic cooperation with other nations,
Yes.
recognizing the benefits of things like trade and investment.
Right. So it's about understanding that Swaziland's economic well-being
Yeah.
is connected to the global economy.
Yeah, for sure.
And finally, it touches on the issue of Swaziland's membership
Okay.
in international organizations.
So being part of the global community,
Yeah,
working with other nations to address those shared challenges.
exactly. It's a recognition that in today's interconnected world, isolation isn't an option.
Right.
Cooperation is key.
Well, there you have it. We've reached the end of our deep dive
You have.
into the Constitution of Swaziland.
It's been a journey
It has.
of discovery.
Yeah, we've covered so much ground, from the powers of the king to the rights of individuals, from that unique Tinkundla system to the management of land and natural resources.
We've seen it all.
Yeah, it's been a journey of discovery, revealing those complexities of a nation striving to balance tradition,
Yes.
modernity,
Uh-huh.
and all the challenges of the 21st century.
It really is a fascinating look
It is.
at how a nation adapts its governance over time.
Yeah, and as you continue to explore this document on your own,
Yes.
I really encourage you to consider the impact it has
Okay.
on the daily lives of Swazi citizens.
Yes.
Like, how does it shape the balance of power, the protection of rights, the pursuit of justice and prosperity?
These are the big questions.
Yeah, those are the questions worth pondering,
They are.
that go beyond just the legal text
Right.
and delve into the heart of what it means to be a nation and a people.
Beautifully said.
So until our next deep dive,
Okay.
keep exploring,
Yes.
keep questioning, and keep seeking knowledge.
Happy exploring. Institutions is, of course, the monarchy.
Right.
As we've discussed, the king holds this very unique position,
Yeah.
embodying both the modern state and those ancient traditions.
It is a fascinating blend of roles.
It is.
He's both a modern head of state and a traditional leader all in one.
That's right.
It's really cool.
And the Constitution recognizes this duality,
Okay.
outlining the king's powers and responsibilities in both realms.
Now, alongside the king,
Yes.
there's another crucial figure, the Queen Mother.
Yes, the Queen Mother, or Indlavokazi.
Yeah, a figure of immense respect and influence within Swazi culture.
Right, and the Constitution acknowledges her role as this key advisor to the king
Okay.
and as a guardian of Swazi traditions and customs.
So it's a recognition of the importance of both male and female leadership within that traditional structure.
It is.
Okay, now beyond the monarchy,
All right.
the Constitution also recognizes traditional councils,
Yes.
like Swazi National Council, also known as Sibaya.
Ibaya.
Yeah, the Great National Gathering.
That's right.
You talked about it briefly before.
We did.
It's where those representatives from across the nation come together to discuss those important matters.
Exactly. The Constitution describes it as the nation meeting at the Queen Mother's official residence to deliberate and decide on these, critical national issues.
So it's a forum for dialogue, for bringing different voices to the table.
It is.
I like it.
It's a way of ensuring that decisions reflect the will of the people, even within a monarchical system.
Okay, now on a more local level, the Constitution also recognizes the role of chiefs.
Yes, the chiefs.
Yeah, they're the traditional leaders responsible for administering local areas.
That's right. They uphold customary law, they resolve disputes,
and represent the interests of their communities. And the Constitution outlines their responsibilities, emphasizing their role in maintaining order, and kind of connecting the central government with those local communities.
So it's like recognizing the importance of that decentralized leadership, right?
It is.
Having people on the ground who really understand the specific needs and challenges.
The specific needs,
of their communities.
Right. And chiefs often rely on advisors, known as tinvuna, to help them carry out those duties.
The wise counsel.
Yes.
Guiding the chiefs, making sure that those decisions are made in accordance with tradition and custom.
Right. And the Constitution acknowledges their role in traditional governance, recognizing their importance in keeping those systems running smoothly.
So it's really incredible how this Constitution weaves together all these different layers of leadership.
It is.
From the king and the queen mother at the top to the chiefs and those advisors working within those local communities. It's a very complex and intricate tapestry. Reflecting those like deep-rooted traditions and cultural values of the Swazi people.
Absolutely. It's about finding a way for tradition and modernity to coexist.
It is.
And complement each other.
Well said.
Now, I think as we kind of wrap up our exploration of this amazing document, there's one final area I want to touch on: international relations. Because in today's world, no nation is an island, right?
That's right.
Every country has to interact with that global community.
You do.
And the Swazi Constitution recognizes this.
It does.
It lays out some key principles for how Swaziland engages with the rest of the world. I'm curious to hear what those principles are, What kind of stance do they take on the global stage?
Well, the Constitution really emphasizes the importance of peaceful coexistence. It states that the government should promote international peace and security.
So a commitment to diplomacy. To resolving disputes peacefully. To working with other nations to create a more stable world.
That's right.
It's so important.
And it also emphasizes the importance of respecting international law. So playing by the rules, honoring treaties, upholding those principles.
Exactly.
That help keep the international system functioning.
And the Constitution also highlights the need for economic cooperation with other nations. Recognizing those benefits of things like trade and investment.
It's about understanding that Swaziland's economic well-being is connected to the global economy.
For sure.
And finally, it touches on the issue of Swaziland's membership in international organizations. So being part of that global community. Working with other nations to address those shared challenges.
Exactly. It's a recognition that in today's interconnected world, isolation isn't an option.
It's not.
Cooperation is key.
It is.
Well, there you have it.
We've made it.
We've reached the end of our deep dive into the Constitution of Swaziland.
What a journey.
It has been a journey. And we've covered so much ground. From the powers of the king to the rights of individuals. From that unique Tinkunla system.
It is unique.
To the management of land and natural resources. It's really been an incredible journey.
It has.
Revealing those complexities of a nation. Striving to balance tradition, modernity, and, all those challenges of the 21st century.
I think one of the things that I was really impressed by is how much they emphasize the importance of the Swazi people in all of this. It's not just about the rules and the institutions. It's about how those things serve the people.
Absolutely. And as you continue to explore this document on your own, I encourage you to think about that. Think about how these different parts of the Constitution actually affect the lives of the Swazi people.
Their daily lives.
Exactly.
It's like a living document.
It is. It's not just some dusty old text.
No.
It's something that shapes their reality.
It does.
And I think that's really powerful.
It is.
So, until our next deep dive,
keep
exploring, keep questioning, and keep seeking knowledge.
Happy exploring.